everyone, Rob here, and today I'm going to be covering how to secure WinRM over HTTPS using group policy. At the end of this video I'm going to cover the certificate part. The first part of this video is for group policy, and as a reference on the BTPS SecPack, which is an open source collection of PowerShell scripts that can be used to better create visibility into an environment. And I'm going to have this link in the description so you can follow along, use it to copy and paste stuff, such as a registry value that comes on later. The first part is useful WinRM commands to know. We'll cover those later as well. The second part is for Windows event forwarding. So there's two group policies to set that up. That's not in this environment, so we're ignoring them. But our group policy WinRM settings is what we're going to cover here. So in our group policy management, if you don't already know how to create group policy, simply right click on group policy objects, go to new, name your policy setting and click OK to create it. That will put it in your drop down. You can then set your settings, and then after configuring your settings, apply it to the different OUs such as domain controllers by right clicking, link an existing GPO, and then selecting the GPO that you created and modified. So that, of course, is how to add that. We're going to edit our settings WinRM over HTTPS so that you can see what everything looks like configured. I'm going to put this on the right-hand side, and we'll have the group policy main window on the left-hand side here. Another thing to take note of in our scope is I have added domain computers and domain controllers to the security filtering. This gives the basically desktops, servers, all that permission to apply all of these settings. The delegation, all the defaults are left there, and details, of course, we have this enabled. So next we're going to view our settings. What's configured in here is first we're going to cover a couple things. So if we open our preferences, computer configuration, preferences, control panel settings, click services, and you can see I have this configured already, but you would right click services, go to new service. Here you would type WinRM, or if you prefer to use the three-dot drop down, you can scroll down to the bottom and then select Windows Remote Management that way. For a service action, we want to start the service. Timeout of 30 seconds is fine. Leave no change under log on as. This ensures that the network service is used to start the account. If you want to create a custom account to do this, you will need to make sure you assign that account start service permissions. And that can get configured under Windows settings, security settings, local policies, and is it user rights? Make sure I'm in the right section. It's either that or security options. So we want to allow, oh, here we go. Yep, so user rights, assignment, and then log on as a service. These permissions are required for a user account or to be able to start a service such as WinRM. So back down to our services tab where we have WinRM, start service, no change. Under the recovery section, put all the failures to restart the service and leave 0 and 1 as your defaults. Then click OK. Next thing we're going to do is create a registry value. So under the registry settings, for computer configuration, preferences, Windows settings, registry, right click, new registry item, and then HKey local machine. And what I would suggest doing here is copy and pasting the registry value I have on this page. So you would simply highlight software all the way over to category, copy that, paste it in here, delete that extra space at the end. Then we're going to call the value state, make the D-word value a value of 1. Reg D-word 1. So actually it's a decimal value of 1. So if that's not selected by default, make sure you select that. I thought it was last time, but I was mistaken, I guess. I don't have anything selected under the Common tab. Just click OK as soon as you have that registry item created. So that covers everything we're going to set in preferences. I know some people like to avoid that because they're hard to undo, but these are settings we want to keep once they're created. Another thing we're going to do next is under administrative templates, we're going to there's two. So we're going to go to network, we're going to go to system and Windows components here. Under network, we go to network connections. So just to highlight, computer configuration, policies, administrative templates, network, network connections, Windows Defender Firewall, domain profile, and what we want to do here is allow ICMP exceptions and allow inbound remote administration exception. This is mostly for Windows management instrumentation. It helps make some things easier. It's not required for Windows Remote Management, but I want to mention it in case you plan on using it. So for this Windows Allow Inbound Remote Management Administration exception, you'll see I have this enabled, and I have the subnet range, which is the only one in my domain. Feel free to add more than one, or if you prefer to use a wildcard, you can also use that for all addresses. And allow ICMP exceptions, we're basically allowing a ping here with allow inbound echo request. And I'll leave all the other ones blank. So with those set, you should be able to use Windows Management Instrumentation, okay? That's all we need for network. Next we're going to computer configuration, policies, administrative templates. Then we're going to system, then credentials delegation. And this is for CredSSP. So what CredSSP is when you, for example, Windows Admin Center uses this. If you authenticate to Windows Admin Center, CredSSP is able to be used by Windows Admin Center to pass your credentials from your desktop or wherever you're accessing WAC from, or Windows Admin Center, and it can pass your credentials onto the other machines in the environment that have been loaded into the config. So it's kind of allowing a service to pass on your credentials. So to do that securely, we want to make sure, for one, we select Encryption, Oracle Remediation, enable this policy, and set to force updated clients. That prevents the CVE associated with CredSSP from being exploited due to old versions or out-of-date Windows versions. This ensures that CredSSP is used without the vulnerability that was discovered with it. Allow delegating fresh credentials and allow delegating fresh credentials with NTLM-only server are going to be set exactly the same here. So you want to enable the policy, leave this box checked for concatenate OS defaults with input above, click the show button, and as you can see here, we're setting our WSMan instance to a wildcard of anything in our domain. So what we're doing here is allowing basically credentials to be passed from anything at osbornepro.com to anything at osbornepro.com. If you want to define servers individually, you're welcome to do that as well. However, this is a great blanket statement for your domain. If you plan on you have one server that you don't want to use with Windows Remote Management, I wouldn't suggest doing it from here. I would suggest just blocking the port on the firewall. It's much more efficient that way than putting negatives in this manner or trying to use a negative. So, and again, allow delegating fresh credentials with NTLM-only server authentication is set exactly the same way. So it's enabled, button is checked, and we have WSMan /wildcard.osbornepro.com or whatever your domain is. The next thing we're going to cover is the Windows components, and we want to scroll down to Windows Remote Management, and we have two here. Client is, of course, when you're on a device and you want to remote somewhere else, you are the client. And when you're remoting somewhere else, the listening service is what the settings under this group policy are. So this is WinRM service is the listener, client is the client. Notice under WinRM Client we have allowed basic authentication. This is because Office 365 uses basic authentication, and as do a lot of other services. So if you want to import commandlets from sessions such as Exchange Online, you're going to want to leave this enabled. This passes credentials in clear text, hence our use of WinRM over HTTPS to ensure they're encrypted. Now, allow CredSSP authentication. If you're going to disable this, you can disable, or you don't have to set those other settings I covered before. If you are using it, set those other settings and enable it here. We're not going to allow unencrypted traffic. WinRM by default uses an encryption mechanism. However, putting it through an HTTPS tunnel adds an extra layer of security and ensures things, such as basic authentication, credentials are protected more. Disallow digest authentication. So we are preventing that. I'm actually going to enable that here. That's by disabling this. So if you disable or do not configure this setting, it uses digest. Digest authentication is a secure means of communication. Typically it's done over IIS, and it is basically, it's better than basic auth. So if anything uses digest, use that when you can. Disallow Kerberos authentication. What we are doing there is the CIS benchmarks suggest that you disable Kerberos. However, they require that you enable it if you're going to use Syscat Pro Dashboard. So it's okay to use Kerberos authentication. I have that enabled here. I also am enabling Negotiate authentication, which allows the client and server to negotiate with each other. I do this because I have also settings configured that use strong TLS protocols, TLS 1.2, and disabling TLS 1.1 wherever I can and below. And I also have ciphers set so that weak ciphers such as triple DES are not used in RC4, or ARC4, I guess I should say. Trusted hosts. I'm going to select that and enable it, and you can see here I'm enabling anything from osbornepro.com, and this allows basically trust anything with an osbornepro.com domain name. You can also just leave a simple wildcard if you want to trust everything and you want to use WinRM on stuff that's not joined to your domain or joined to a different domain. You can add other ones here as well by simply adding a comma and domain.com. But I'm going to leave it in that manner. Next, we're going to configure the WinRM service. Basically, these settings should be mirrored from the client, or they are typically mirrored from the client. A couple different ones here are allow remote server management through WinRM. And what this does is I'm defining the IP address range or subnet range that should be used to bind the WinRM listener to this IP address. So currently right now I couldn't connect to, for example, a loopback address such as 127.0.0.1. I can add it by simply adding a comma and adding that IP address. Maybe I want to add 127.0.1.1 as well. If I want the WinRM service to bind to all available addresses, I would use a wildcard. That is typical of people to do because there can be issues when an IP address changes or something gets modified in the environment. It could create connection issues. Because my environment's so small and this is a demo, I'm going to leave the range that I have defined, which is 192.168.137.1 through 254. Here I believe you're not able to use just a subnet mask like /24. You actually have to define the range because you're defining the IP address that it should listen to. So that is that part. We also want to disallow, or actually real quick while I'm doing this, we can view our listener by going WinRM E for enumerate, or we could also do enum or enumerate WinRM /config/listener, and you can see my certificate thumbprint on port 5986 is assigned to this subnet address. That's why there's no IPv6 address there, because I didn't configure that. There's no loopback address. This is the only listening address, which is what we covered with allow remote server management through WinRM. Another thing here with, where is it? Disallow WinRM from storing run as credentials. I have that enabled, and what this is for is if an attacker were on a device and they did CMD key / list and there were some stored credentials there, they can be used and passed on because they're saved and they're meant to be used in that manner. So we prevent the storing of run as credentials to prevent that from happening over a WinRM connection. Notice I have disabled the HTTP listener. This is for port 5985. We want to use only encrypted communication, which is port 5986. So I have that listener enabled and the other one disabled. Again, negotiate authentication, we have that enabled. Kerberos is enabled. Allow unencrypted traffic is disabled, and basic auth and CredSSP auth are enabled. So that covers those settings for Windows remote management. That should be all the group policy settings you need. The next thing that is important is we're going to cover the certificate authority section of this. So to create a Windows remote management certificate template, we need to go to Tools on our certificate authority, select Certificate Authority. This will open our window. We'll go to our Domains drop-down, Certificate Templates. I have one created and set up already, but I'm going to show you how to do it. So we right-click Certificate Templates, go to Manage. This will open our Certificate Template console. Scroll down to your web server template. Right-click on that and select Duplicate Template. We're going to leave our compatibility settings as is. I have changed these to different versions before, and that has actually prevented my ability to assign certain certificates, so it's good to leave the older version that's selected. If you go to the General tab, you can name your certificate whatever you like, such as WinRM over HTTPS is what I called mine. I select Publish Certificate in Active Directory. For request handling, you can allow or disallow a private key to be exported. I typically allow it just because it makes life easier. It's a Windows remote management certificate, so there's a chance you may not want to export it. However, I prefer to have that selected in case there's times where I've upgraded a server by creating a new instance and then moving stuff over, so that helps in doing that and allowing me to keep the same cert. Under cryptography, we want to make sure at least minimum key size of 2048 is selected. If it's set lower, make it higher. If you can go higher if you like to 4096 and beyond. However, 2048 should be fine. And the other thing for security, we want to add domain computers. This allows the computers to get their own certificates or request one, and we want to have them with write, enroll, and auto enroll permissions. We're going to do the same thing with domain controllers, and we're going to give those write, enroll, auto enroll, and read permissions. So that sets our correct permissions there. There's, what am I missing here? Where are you? Okay, so allow private key. Check that. Servers, subject name. Under the subject name tab, select build from Active Directory information. Under the checkboxes, select DNS name and deselect user principal name. Under subject format name, select common name. And this is all we need to set up for our template. Then we would click apply or OK. And this is the certificate I created earlier. So you can see I have it published to Active Directory under subject name, DNS name, DNS name. DNS name is good here. Common name also works. And cryptography 2048. Compatibility is set left on our defaults, and that's what I wanted to cover again. Security for domain controllers and domain computers. We have auto enroll and enroll. Good stuff. So now with that template, if you have multiple domain controllers in an environment and you want to make sure that you can access this template as fast as possible, you would go to Tools, go to your domain controller, Tools, then Sites and Services. And as soon as that loads, we're going to basically bullet drop down until we get to our NTDS settings here. So under Sites, default site name, servers, and then you would select your other servers, and you can, I don't think I have it because I only have one domain controller, but you would basically right click on NTDS settings and set force replication now. And you do that for all your domain controllers. As soon as they finish their replication, you'll be able to open your local cert manager by doing certlm.msc. This opens the cert manager for the local computer. You go to your personal certificates. You would right click on certificates, all tasks, request new cert, next, and then you would select WinRM over HTTPS. That would make it basically appear here is what we're looking for. Click Enroll and it will assign the cert, and as you can see here I have this one assigned already using certificate thumbprint 21B8 etc. And now you can see if I do WinRM enum WinRM config /listener, I can verify this is the cert being used here. If I wanted to, let's pretend that wasn't my thumbprint for a second. So I'm going to do thumbprint equals, and that's going to be my thumbprint value that we're going to set. So if I wanted to change that listener certificate, I would have to do this. WinRM delete WinRM /config /listener. Address, address equals anything plus transport equals HTTPS. And now you can see there's no longer port 5986 with the cert assigned. What we want to do now is basically assign that certificate. So to do that, I have a command ready, so you don't have to wait for me to type it here. We have the thumbprint variable set for certificate thumbprint, and this is, which device am I on here? DCO1. So dco1.osbornepro.com. Make sure it's accepted as a string. I'm not sure that's needed, but I'm doing it just in case. I have thumbprint set there, which because I set that variable here. And when I hit enter, it then should assign thumbprint. I might have spelled it wrong. dco1.osbornepro.com. And hopefully I didn't spell something wrong because it's saying the CN and the host name that were provided do not match. So let's take a look here. If I open up my cert, oh, I'm on CA. This was issued to CA, so I'm on CA. Sorry about that, everybody. I thought I was on the different computer, so this needs to be CA, not DCO1. And now I have my listener successfully configured. Config /listener, and now you can see the certificate has been assigned to that protocol. And again, these commands I have by default, which I'm going to have this link in the description of the video, for the BTPS SecPack, which is an open source project I have. And these are the commands here that you can copy and paste. They're good to know for just general management with Windows Remote, WinRM basically. So that sets our certificate, and notice here the host name is ca.osbornepro.com. If it's just CA, you can do things such as, like when you do Invoke-Command, say my certificate, for example, just so I'm making sure I explain this well. If my certificate here has a name of ca.osbornepro.com, if that was just set to ca and there was no domain there, I could still communicate with that by doing Invoke-Command hide computer name ca use SSL script block, who am I. However, this would work because that certificate is correct. However, with things such as Windows Event Forwarding, this communication would never be established because it only tries .osbornepro.com. Hide computer name ca. I am ca, and the reason this didn't work is because I don't have a listener set up on the local device on 127.0.0.1. It's only on 192.168, so I can only do this on a remote machine, which is my DC01. And you also, when you use the use SSL switch parameter, you don't have to define the port, though you're welcome to if you like, but it uses that port by default. And you can also see I have port 5985 disabled if I remove use SSL, and that communication will never happen. I'll eventually get an error message. So that is how to use or how to configure Windows Remote Management over HTTPS. Leave a comment, let me know what you think. Thank you.